welcome to U-Systems podcast, Collaborate to Innovate. With me I've got Scott from HPE. Would you like to just introduce yourself quickly?
Sure, Scott Duplantis with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I'm a chief technologist in the energy and oil and gas sector for the company, and I work with the top account segment for the energy and oil and gas space.
Oh, amazing. So as an industry, what do you think is our pressing challenge that we need to face and take head on?
Well, I mean, that's pretty broad, but from a perspective of where we're at supercomputing, I think it's supply and demand. I think we're seeing a lot of challenges that people want to do things, but it's hard to do, takes long lead times, the costs are going up, the complication of running large supercomputing footprints, is getting more complicated. It used to be easy, everything was air cooled and you had your own data center, and now, do you have to retrofit your data center? Do you have to go to liquid cooling at some point? They all will.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that logistical challenge is going to be, in this space, will certainly be, a challenge.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of that comes with the kind of partners that you collaborate with and decide to kind of put your trust in. What would you say is a really key principle when choosing those partners?
Yeah, I mean, because of the space that I'm in and working with, really it's the Nvidias, it's the AMDs, it's the Intels, the big players, because the rest of the mechanics, HPE does, right? So
yeah.
We build the servers and racks and enclosures, and we've got partnerships with all of the cooling technologies, or we've built our own in many cases, like the DLC solutions that we have. So really it's, from a lead time perspective, really GPUs are dominating the conversation and the lead time expectations.
Yeah. So it's kind of good that you have a lot of more control over your own lead times, like you said, manufacturing your own cooling
right.
solutions. I think that's a very fortunate position to be in, I'm sure.
And we're like every other OEM, right?
Yeah.
We're no different than our competitors, and we're all standing in line, with our hands out when a customer's got a big pursuit going, and it's the first, who's first, who's got the best relationship, yeah. And so it's no different than 10 years ago with talking about the cloud or something else. It's just, right now the focus is really on, it's shifting from high science, supercomputing workloads like I'm used to, like seismic interpretation, and now AI, and AI seems to be the three choices that are the topic of conversation and where, the industry buzz is.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype words in our industry, and AI is definitely one of those at the moment.
It's very similar to me, to when public cloud became a thing, right? All of the large consulting organizations and the analysts would say, everybody's going to the cloud.
Yeah.
I mean, it's go cloud or go home, all in on the cloud. That's IT today, right? And CIOs bought into it. And some of them were successful, but a lot of them just drove their costs up, created more complexity in their environment. And in this case, the hype cycle around AI right now is really big, even bigger, I think, than cloud. And I think the expectations of what will come from it are maybe overrated, but maybe underrated. And I don't think we know enough right now. So it's really like an experimentative, it's almost like toys for, scientists and IT technologists, building a chatbot. Okay, great.
Yeah.
What's the business case? What did it save your company from a money perspective or an efficiency? Make you more competitive? Increase your speed to market. It has to solve a business problem, and right now a lot of it is like, hey AI, create me an image of Kate with horns on her head, like a Viking. So
yeah.
You got to wonder when it starts to get tactical.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of good things that can come out of the creation of AI, and there's a lot of harmful things where you are questioning the truth of even the history of humanity,
yeah.
And where we are today. So with the development of AI in our industry, what do you think is changing the most in terms of the architecture of a data center? Is it the cooling? Is it, like you said, the Nvidia chips? What is the...
Well, I think it's a combination. There's probably no one answer, but for a while there, I think co-location was really kind of a big thing, right? And then it turned into a real estate trust, and it was more of an investment firm type of mentality. And oh yeah, it's a colo, but that's not that's not our business. Our business is real estate and least income, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of had maybe planed out a little bit, but now that AI is spinning up the way that it is, and the need for, higher power, higher cooling requirements are really, becoming a forefront conversation more so than general purpose IT is or was. So, planning for that, now it's like, okay, we can't do this in our data center. We need a colo. We need a colo built for a high performance computing, not just general workloads.
Yeah.
So those conversations, need to happen. And then a lot of companies they built their own data center and they did a really good job. It was fit for purpose, and now it's not. And so, I think seeing where the industry is going to go with that, and and then I look at things like, Google and some of the big cloud players buying nuclear power plants, and like,
Yeah.
okay, you could have never guessed that even 5 years ago.
No, 100%. I think there's a lot of changes in the industry that you couldn't have guessed a year ago where we would be today. In terms of
ChatGPT
yeah,
kind of blew up the world when it comes to this conversation, and it's kind of like the iPhone maybe, or like iTunes or something like that. When your kids are telling you how cool the technology is, all of a sudden CEOs are waking up and going, okay, wait a minute, I didn't see this coming, and now all of a sudden you have to figure out, how do I take advantage of this?
yeah. But I do think it's quite beautiful that the younger generations are getting excited by technology, and hopefully we can get a more interest in the workforce and joining our data center, because...
And I think we're going to see a lot of change in that, because years ago, in order to be successful in this type of industry, you had to be a coder. You had to be able to write code. It was very involved. It took real, heavy duty training and that type of thing. And now kids are coming right out of college, and it's low code, no code. It's the ability to use natural language processing to be able to write code. It's code additive companies that basically all the pick, and off you go. Well, that's making the speed to finding a product or a solution so much faster.
Yeah.
That it'll be, I think the change rate will be very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, and if you look at this conference, I kind of laugh a little bit. I got plenty of gray hair. This conference has got a lot of gray hair. There's a big gap between a lot of the people that are here that are, been doing science and high computational workloads, to the people coming into the workforce or midway, and there's a gap there.
Yeah.
That if you just walk around, you'll see that there's that, from here to here, not a lot of representation. But I love seeing all the universities,
Yeah.
and all of the young faces in here, and because 5 years ago at this conference, if you didn't have gray hair, nobody talked to. It was definitely people have been doing it a long time.
I would say this is why it's one of my favorite conferences, is because of the inclusion of the universities.
Yeah.
Because at the minute, they have the most money for the investment and more likely to take
Yeah.
a risk.
Well, and I
try
like the
something.
fact that a lot of this is based on, they're evaluating papers, they're evaluating ideas, they're evaluating, student submissions.
Yeah.
There's a small conference in Houston where I live that is focused around HPC. And the students at that university all come up with their boards and everything, so it's a lot of fun to watch.
So do you do a lot of mentoring within HPE to bring students up through the industry?
I have, the folks, because my background is, I was in technology sales for a long time, and then I was an IT executive for quite a long time and managed a large team, and so I've kind of been on both sides of the fence, so I've had mentees, in multiple different parts of my career.
Oh, amazing. I love that. Going back to the architecture of the data center, at the minute there's quite a hard split between the grey space and the white space. Do you foresee that coming together as one, or continuing to be separate?
Well, I think there's going to continue to be separation for some time, because when you look around here, the workloads that are being done are not part of the company's IT, what runs the business, right?
Yeah.
So I think the what runs the business, ERP and back office and all of that type of applications and software running on hypervisors and running on dedicated infrastructure, all of which is not completely fired off from the world. It has to be protected from the internet and vice versa. Whereas a lot of these large supercomputing environments are all hardened, they're firewalled in, they don't talk to the cloud unless they have a specific need to do so. So it's a different mindset.
Okay.
It's kind of like, large supercomputing environments that have 100 petabytes of data. Someone who doesn't know the industry will say, well, how are you backing that up? And they're like, you can't back up 100 petabytes. It's like trying to swallow an elephant, in one bite. So, those type of things will remain different, and the mindsets are different. And if you talk to the people around here who are from the industry, so the operators, an upstream oil and gas seismic team supporting a large supercomputer, they don't even know what IT's doing, and don't care. They've got different budgets. They report to different leaders many times. So it's just a different part of the business, and it's run differently and financed differently. So
different priorities, I guess, to get the
one is making you money, and that's the point of a lot of this generative AI. Is the intent should be to make your company more money, increase your margins, whatever it might be, reduce safety, incidents, something that adds to your pocket, to the bottom line. Whereas enterprise IT is still a cost center. It's the engine in the car, and you got to put gas and oil in it, and you got to keep it running. But if you're going back and forth to work, you don't need a Ferrari, and you want something reliable. Whereas in this world, you want a Ferrari, but you can't quite afford it. So you're looking for that used Ferrari because you do need to go fast to be competitive.
The one with the least amount of bumps on it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to supply chain, do you think there's any land-related challenges that are going to come up, specifically in the United States or around the world?
Well, from a supply chain perspective, we saw, and we had a lot of fear during COVID.
Okay.
A lot of factories shut down, people were sent home, and we saw some delays in the market for simple things, hard drives and that type of thing. And it took supply chain logistics and spread it way out, and there was a lot of fear. And that has mostly course corrected itself. Taiwan coming back online and those type of things. But there's a geopolitical situation in the world that we can't predict, I certainly can't, where if China decides to invade Taiwan, we're going to see issues. If we don't step up our chip manufacturing here in the US, we could see issues. But it's all solvable problems with the right amount of money and the right investment, so we'll see what happens, but I think there's risk, of course.
Yeah, I think this is a very high-risk industry in some instances, because like you say, there's regions that we're very reliant on to get the technology to us.
Yeah. And
country governments now need to put more investment in their own to make sure that we can cover it. The
risk-reward situation is dynamic. It's many, many layers, right? There's the risk of, the ethical, what I think was the ethical risk of, having this capability in generative AI, and you start looking at data sets, and now you're looking at things you shouldn't be looking at.
Yeah.
And you have to have that governance as a company to say, okay, this is with a goal, and this is the data we want to analyze, and we don't want to expose data about our people or salaries or something silly like that.
Yeah.
And also the bad actors that are out there, make sure you keep them off of your supercomputer or your environment. So there's just so many layers to it, between the environmental risks, data centers space, blowing up, the guesstimates that data centers will consume 7, 8, 9% of world power at some point, which no one knows if that's quite true or not.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fear and uncertainty that they're throwing out there on what could happen. So it just, a lot of these problems all solve themselves over time because technology gets better along the way. So the cooling situation of air cool and direct liquid cool or rear door or immersion, it's going to be fluid.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that. I really, bad pun, sorry.
Well, and I think a lot of it is educating people outside of our industry to say that we really aren't the big bad monsters that sometimes the media portrays us, and we're doing what we can to make sure that data center expansion and our sustainability goals are in line, because it's, like you said, it's a big risk factor.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's a lot of things going on now where building a data center to support a higher end workload like this, there's a lot more thought being put into it. Conversations that I've had with companies that are looking at this from we build a data center, but we reuse the heat to help crops, or they're using the waste byproducts of the heat and those type of things more constructively, where in the past they didn't think about it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that innovation makes our products a lot better,
well,
because you have to think outside the box.
and we kind of have to.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. You know, when they start firing up 2 or 3 more nuclear power plants, that's good, clean, green energy.
Yeah.
But with it comes risk. With it comes a lot of other regulation and cost added into the equation. You know, I'm gonna be watching closely the hyperscaler that bought the nuclear power plant, because I used to be in that industry, and it's a highly regulated industry. One of the reasons that power plants got decommissioned like that was because the cost to repair, the cost to maintain is high. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
So it's really the fight between cost of maintaining it and then the sustainability that it could provide.
At the end of the day, it's how much does the electricity cost that it produces, and is it competitive? Or are you doing this, and I think this might be the case, we just need more power. So how are we going to do that? Building a nuclear power plant would take 10 years. So buying, repairing, refurbishing one is probably the quickest path to market to do that. And if they're using it for only their own use, well, then you've got a good cycle there, a good circle there. But,
Is there a way to combine different technologies? As in using nuclear as well as wind? So when they may be trying to upscale a nuclear power plant, they can back up with the wind?
I don't know. The one that I keep my eye on personally is the small nuclear reactor space. Okay. It's young. There's a lot of companies out there that are trying to bring that technology to market. I think of it as the neighborhood nuclear reactor, where suburbs could be built out with a small nuclear reactor that's completely isolated off the normal grid and supplies that particular community. And that could be what we see in data center technology coming. Yeah. Is basically you don't build a data center without your own small nuclear reactor that powers your data center and your customers. So I don't know. I keep an eye on it, but it seems to slip a little further out. It's like quantum computing. It's not quite there. It's still a ways away.
But it kind of sounds like a perfect solution, because then you're maintaining jobs in the area.
It does, especially if it's clean, green, quality power, easy to maintain, the waste byproduct, as opposed to nuclear power plants today, which you have the waste, the fuel rods that you have to, at the end of their life, they have to be disposed of properly and stored properly for the million years it takes for them to decay. Whereas these salt-based type units, and I'm not an expert at this, but they're much cleaner, much easier to get rid of the spent fuel and that type of thing. So I think it's interesting.
Well, I'll definitely keep an eye on that one, because again, media doesn't like to show the nuclear side of things. They rather focus on the solar, the wind, and
I think it's changing. There was negative perceptions around nuclear power for many years, and the industry was in decline because of that, and just the cost to build them. It's not inexpensive. An LNG plant to produce power is much cheaper to produce, right? But the ecological fear and uncertainty around that. It's good, clean power, but a lot of people still see anything that is produced from a hydrocarbon that's as bad, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I personally don't know enough to be able to state definitively what it would really look like, but I find it hard to imagine solar and wind becoming our 80% of where our power generation comes from, because I'd have to park my car on top of a solar panel, I'm pretty sure. Earth is only so big.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I go drive out to West Texas and I see like 100 wind farms, I don't think of it as a great nature experience, so.
No. It's quite interesting. There was a debate in the UK about creating the wind farms and then having to introduce carbon capture because they're cutting down the trees to put the windmills up. So it was a bit of a weird cycle to be part of.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the carbon capture industry. It's a very important thing to be able to do that, but they have to monetize it. Nobody builds a carbon capture plant just to be good citizens of the earth. They're monetizing that through the use of carbon credits or carbon offsets, and and that's kind of the moving the air around in the bubble that is Earth conversation for me. So is it helping to reduce the global production? No, it's trying to manage and deal with the production we have today that is still increasing. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Oh, I look forward to it. Well, so at the end of the podcast, I have quick fire questions if you're interested.
Shoot.
Okay. What is your favorite word or phrase?
Word or phrase? Yeah, I don't think I have one.
No?
I'm trying to think. I don't think I have a catchphrase. Do I need one?
You don't need one. I was just trying to find interesting ways because someone I interviewed yesterday said his favorite word is hey because of
Hey.
how many different ways you can say it.
Yeah. I probably have one, I just don't realize it.
Okay. Well, you have to come back for another podcast and we can find out the answer.
Yeah, well, when I've done public speaking in the past, it would probably be Yeah, when I used to practice for public speaking, my wife would hear out my pitch a couple times, and she would point at me every time I did an It was very humiliating.
It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to?
Um,
Work or personal?
I mean, on a work level, certainly I'm just intrigued to see where the industry is going to go. Things are changing more rapidly in the past 2 years than they have in, I'd say, the past 10.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of innovation going on, a lot of just new technology, and AI is bringing things to the table that nobody really ever imagined. And I think that companies that embrace AI will be competitive, and companies who kind of hold it at arm's length will lose some competitive edge in their industry or their space. So it's kind of like, there was a commercial I saw recently, that you're either good at AI or you're gone. And I don't think that's true, but I do think you have to look at it and evaluate how it's going to help your business.
Yeah.
And all of these things should be based on use cases to help a company's financial situation. And technology for technology's sake has generally never been something that stands the test of time.
Yeah. I kind of liken it to maybe people didn't necessarily want to do Excel spreadsheets to do finances, but now it's such an important part of our lives, whether you like spreadsheets or not.
I love spreadsheets,
Yeah,
but not having to have them and manage them, that would be good. I mean, some of the use cases the company I was at before that we were pursuing with advanced analytics, not necessarily AI, it was all around finance. How do we automate these tasks that people have to go and fetch all this data, put it into a spreadsheet, massage the data, run calculations, create a fancy graph to show to the CFO, and all of that. Now you can find ways to automate that and use bot technology and low code, no code technology to be able to create that and do it all the time and have a live feed of it as opposed to, all right, it's the 30th of the month, I got to go run this report. So those productivity gains are going to be massive, I think, over time.
Yeah, 100%. And a happy finance team is a happy every other department, I always say.
In general, yeah.
So what does AI mean to you?
I think for me it's just the creativity I see it bringing to the table, things that, I would not have thought of maybe, like as soon as ChatGPT came out and people started talking about it, the first thing I did was trying to do I have 2 labradoodles. One's a golden doodle, one's a labradoodle.
Oh, nice.
And the one's named Loki because we got him first and liked the name. And of course we got a second one, it's a boy, so we have to name the second one Thor. And so I was trying to get them to generate an image of labradoodles that looked like Norse gods. And it never quite came out right, but it was fun doing it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the sheer immensity of how many things you could possibly do with it.
Yeah.
Not only personally, just for your own enjoyment, but professionally in the computer vision space and and a lot of the things that I see right now, digital twin capability and be able to look at something digitally, predict when things are going to happen, solve problems before they happen. I think those are going to be just intriguing to see how they develop.
Yeah, I like that. My last question, since we are at a technology show, would you consider yourself tech savvy? Are you the man to fix the TV?
I would say I'm kind of like that, not quite technical enough as I maybe would want to be, but technical enough that I can understand most conversations and what they're trying to say and what the problem they're trying to solve, and that's kind of where I spend my time is, what problem are you trying to solve, and then I line up the right people to be able to talk to those customers to solve those problems. So technical enough, I think, would be a good way to put it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was a great conversation, and I'm going to keep an eye out on nuclear power plants supporting data centers.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where things go.
Yeah.
So good to meet you.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.